Hi people, welcome to the New Forest. As you can see behind me, I'll give you a little spin. I'm just out for a bit of a Sunday run and I've been out testing a product that I've been using for a little while. I used it for the Race to the Stones a couple of weekends back, and I was just out to see if I could learn a little bit more. It's attached to this shoe here. You can see it's a little sensor on the laces there that clips on a bit like a race timing chip that you might get. It's got a little cradle that you can fit on your laces. Now this is called a power sensor, and this one is by a company called Stryd. Now what power does, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this metric because it's a new thing that's coming into running a lot more. It's been in cycling a long time. Power basically enables you to run on a consistent output, and the argument goes that this is something that's going to be able to make you do that and run more evenly without breaking your threshold better than pace or heart rate. Now a lot of people I've spoken to about this have said, how can it be better than heart rate? What's the differences? Why is it such a big deal? Now the main difference that I can gather from the research that I've done so far and speaking to the founders is that heart rate, there's a lot of other outside factors that can affect how you're running or how your heart rate looks, which makes it very hard to maintain consistency. So one of those things is, you can see it's a brilliantly hot day here, is heat temperature raises your heart rate, and that doesn't necessarily correlate to how hard your body is working in order to achieve the goal that you want to achieve. Another thing that might do that could be illness or fatigue. So as you get more fatigued, your heart rate rises. So heart rate isn't therefore necessarily an accurate measurement of the actual work that you're doing. So power, the idea is that circumnavigates that. So if you think about it, heart rate is measuring how your body is responding to the work that you're doing. Power is measuring the actual work that you're doing. So, all of those other factors that might come in to how your body's behaving on a certain day that I've just mentioned, there are more than that. But, actually power is being measured at the sort of initial source. And therefore, if you follow power, the idea is that you should be able to remain a little bit more consistent. So I've tested this actually. I tested it at the Race to the Stones, and I tried to run on a power setting of 279 watts. This was based on a measurement that the guys at Stryd had done for me. They looked at my most recent 5k, my most recent 10k, and my most recent half paces. They looked at the elevation of the course that I was going to be running. They looked at the temperature, and out of this they created a critical power metric and then gave me a recommended power to run on in order to achieve a certain goal. Or actually, more importantly, really, not to achieve a certain goal, but a realistic idea of how I was going to be able to run the Race to the Stones. Now, I'd love to have been able to do the 100k's over 2 days in 8 hours. What the Stryd guys were able to do is say, look, based on your current performance, what you've been doing in your most recent runs, you're actually looking at 950 if you run consistently at a power output of 279 watts on the flats and the ups and a little less on the downs. So that's what I did. I went out and I ran on that, and I found it a little bit tough to maintain the power evenly up and down the climbs. And one of the things that changed the day very much for me was the heat outside. So I actually had to quickly kind of adjust that power output. And I didn't quite hit the 950 goal. I actually came in overall in about 10:20, I think was my time. So not far off it, but it was a really, really hot day. About 5 degrees, maybe higher than I had told the Stryd guys what the temperature was going to be. Now on the Sunday of the 50k, I did manage to run at a very, very consistent sort of 245 to 250 power output, and it felt brilliantly comfortable actually. I ran at a steady pace. I ran within myself, and if I look at my stats post-run, I wore a chest strap. Most of that run came in as an active recovery run, and what that shows me, if I'd have run on what the guys at Stryd had said, there was a gap there for me to go up to 279, and I probably could have pushed it a little bit harder. I was reserving a lot because I didn't know how hot it was going to get. Anyway, that's the long way around of saying, I really believe that was over a course that was up and down. It was in different conditions that changed. I think if you can take this onto the road and look at a road marathon that's fairly flat, something like the Berlin Marathon, where you've done all your training, you then do the critical power test, which there's a test that you can do on the track yourself to put it into the app. This will fire you out not only a critical power, but a fairly accurate assessment of where you're at, what pace you're going to run during the marathon, or what time you might be able to hit. Now, if you take that and apply that, this will mean it should stop you doing what I did in Hamburg about 3 months ago, which was I fancied doing a 2:57 or faster. I went out to run a 2:55, so at the pace for a 2:55, and by 14 miles I was a broken man. Again, it was a little bit hotter than I'd expected, but I'd gone too fast in the beginning. I probably wasn't capable of that. When the Stryd guys crunched the numbers from my most recent races, they said, had you gone out at an even pace, you'd have probably been looking at a 3:01. As it happens in Hamburg, because I went out at 2:55, I completely blew up at 14. I came in at 3:18, having had a pretty miserable day and a long way off target time. So, had I run at that consistent power, just under my threshold, using the Stryd, the argument goes that I would have had a much better day, and I would have welcomed that, and I would have run a much better time. It wouldn't have been the time that I had in my head. Kieran wants a PB, but how many times have you gone out and run much harder, or at least with this crazy goal that you think you're going to hit and then failed miserably and had a bit of a terrible time? So I'm still going to go through and continue to test Stryd. I've got lots of halves and road marathons coming up in the coming months, and I'm going to use this to see if I can actually pull out a more consistent run and get closer to my times. The aim really is to go into my training and get to a point where I can crunch the numbers and with Stryd be aiming at a 2:57 or quicker. But I think I'm going to go into each race knowing a lot more about where I'm at, and then being able to run a lot more consistently. So I'm really excited about this as a piece of tech. I'm excited about the sports science that backs it up, and I'm really looking forward to continuing to give it a run as I sort of push through the year of the PBs, and I'll let you know how it goes. But that's basically my rapid summary of power, what it means and how I've been using it so far. As I learn more, I'll share more. But yeah, it's worth taking a look. Have a look at Stryd Running, Google it, have a look at the website and see what you think. Cheers guys, take care.